LinkedIn ads are pretty standard businessy ads. And we wanted to go for something that would be like really bright and fun and like has a lot of movement on LinkedIn is something that would help them stand out a lot.
When you're collaborative and when you're focusing on the problem you're trying to solve and not just focusing on a list of deliverables, instead we're kind of offering a solution that we think is going to actually work better for them and perform better.
They came to us with a huge problem. They were a little bit concerned that they would lose a huge chunk of their revenue. And by huge chunk, I mean almost all of it.
Is proof of why you can't just rely on these partnerships for businesses too. Like, it's good to still remember your own brand or remember to push it for yourself. And because if they hadn't, they may have had, nowhere to send people. All right. Welcome to Behind the Craft. I am back after a brief hiatus as the host of this show. Kelly hosted for me earlier this morning. But today we're joined again by our web director, Jessi Miracle. We were just discussing time travel. It was incredibly intriguing. I think we're going to dive into that a lot more today. Now, today we're going to talk about a really cool project that she and I worked on together in collaboration with our digital marketing team. Anyway, good morning, Jess, or good afternoon, Jess. We should start over. I'm screwing this up.
Good afternoon, Aaron.
All right, so let's dive right in. Tell me about BadgeSmith, who they are, and how they came to be a client for us.
BadgeSmith they are the ones who make the badges. I don't think that honestly, I didn't really think about it, but there's like a lot of those sites out there that are like, they allow you to add your custom stuff and then they manufacture it for you. And it's all like, it feels like kind of like cheap. I don't mean that in a bad way, but just like, those sites that do like a bunch of different stuff and you can like custom print like
right
stuff, any kind of stuff. They had a partnership with one of those people, those groups, and they did the badges. They printed the badges and got them all shipped out, and that partnership was ending for them, and they were a little bit concerned that they would lose a huge chunk of their revenue. And by huge chunk, I mean almost all of it.
Yeah.
So they kind of, I'm not sure how they actually found us, if it was through word of mouth or through our website, but they came to us with a huge problem. They wanted to start like doing some marketing for themselves so that they can establish something so that when that partnership just ended, they would still be getting, business.
Yeah. Yeah. So they came to us through the digital marketing branch of our services and not necessarily the creative sides of it. So they hadn't really gone through a brand process like we typically would do if they came through BrandCraft. So like when that happens, when we have a digital client come to us that isn't necessarily a brand client or a web client, what's that process look like? How do we assess their needs and figure out what creative services they need?
When they come through digital, it's usually digital who assesses that need. If they feel like, what the direction is going to be, if they feel like they need, creative work, then before they like get too far into everything, they'll have a creative person or persons involved in those meetings and discussions so that we can plan out like what kind of campaign would work best and what kind of like messaging and all of that stuff. So it becomes really collaborative at that point. But that needs assessment happens if it's through a digital channel. It happens with digital people.
Yeah. What do you remember? Like what kind of insights in this case, specifically with BadgeSmith, what kind of insights did we get from the digital team as far as like differentiators or things that we could highlight for them in marketing?
From my memory, not a lot. It was hard because I don't think BadgeSmith knew who their audience really was. They had like an idea just based on repeat customers, but they needed something that would let them bring in new customers, and they didn't have that kind of data. So there wasn't a huge like target audience. I think the most important thing that we did discuss was where the ads that we were going to be making were going to be, because that played a pretty big role in the direction for the creative and messaging. But really, I mean, Badgesmith didn't really have much. They didn't really have a brand. They didn't really have, their website was pretty, I don't want to say stark, because that's not the right word, but it didn't have a lot of like, it was very white and black. That was the style. So not a lot of brand to pull from there either.
Yeah, I think the thing I remember, we just kind of went through like, well, what are the selling points we want to hit on? I know they talked about, they had these badges, they were calling them pronoun badges, but they're more than just that, obviously. But they're just identifier badges to kind of help you identify, one, for pronouns. That's becoming a big thing in the workplace. Obviously, people want to have their preferred pronouns, and you want to make sure you respect that. So they had these separate badges that kind of went underneath your ID badge, right? And that was a big one I know that stood out to us as kind of a differentiator, and it was a big seller for them, which is why they mentioned it to us, not so much a differentiator. The other thing was quality. They spoke about quality a lot. And again, customer service, having real customer service and real support that's actual local and, works there at Badgesmith. Those are the differentiators. I remember that, again, you're right, though. It wasn't a lot to go on. Like, and again, with a brand process, we'd probably have a lot more information and a lot bigger of a differentiator. But in just using that, that's sort of where we played on. I'm jumping ahead a little, so let me go back. So with those key points that they kind of gave us, like, how did we come up with the direction and the messaging for the ads?
I mean, to be honest, it's kind of one of my favorite stories to tell. I think I've mentioned it a bunch when we've had like internal meetings about how to be better at collaborating. I mean, we were in a meeting deciding like, all right, how do we schedule this out? Like, who's going to work on what? And I was just like, I think Aaron and I should just get in a meeting and figure it out and go from there, which wasn't like a new thing, but
right.
You and I just like, we scheduled some time, got in a room, and then we were just like, what would be really cool and stand out? And we spent like 2 hours just like going back and forth on what are some angles that we can go with? What are cool design aspects that we can use for badges, and what kind of messaging would really work for them? Or like stand out or like push something, and touch on the points. Like, they really wanted to sell business accounts because that meant recurring revenue for them. But how, I remember we had a huge list and we just kept writing out ideas, and then we would try and match some design stuff, or like you would come up with some cool like wordplay, and I'd be like, oh, it'd be really cool if this is what the design looked like with that. So that's how it started, and then it kind of like snowballed from there in a good way. Because we both got really excited about it and we wanted to continue working on it. And I can't remember when we like got down to it. We wanted to do a campaign with the pronoun badges, showing like, different types of hands, showing different types of badges with different pronouns, and showing even that not just pronouns, but you can have like position titles and stuff like that. And just like really focusing like on the hands themselves and the cards, just alternating, so showing like a wide variety of people and designs. And I was fully planning on just doing that with like find some pictures of people's hands on Adobe Stock and just photoshopping all of it. And I don't know if I like turned to you or you turned to me, but somehow we were just like, why don't we just take the people in the office and photograph their hands holding a blank card?
Yeah.
And we did it super fast too, which is, I think, like it was literally like 4:00.
Yeah.
And we're like, hey, everybody who's here, can you lay on the floor and hold your hand up in the viewfinder so that we can take pictures of your hands? And it turned out really great. And like, I partnered with you to like make it animated too, which I think was really important for that design specifically. And you even got into Photoshop and did some editing on another campaign direction too.
Yeah, I did. I think that's a fun part of the collaboration for me on this, was because obviously I'm not a designer, but I started in video was how I started doing this. So I do know video. And I think it's just, again, it was dynamic on its own. We were working, and I just kept thinking, what would be cool though is we could animate this. We could make these GIFs too. They don't just have to be. And it started off as static.
It kept just building on itself.
Yeah, and that's what happens though when you're collaborative and when you're focusing on the problem you're trying to solve, and not just focusing on, like you talked about earlier, rather than just taking here's a list of deliverables. Instead, we're kind of offering a solution that we think is going to actually work better for them and perform better.
Mm-hmm.
And having that freedom to do that, that's sort of where I think that's what made the project so fun, but also I think why it made it so successful. So started talking about this a little bit already, but like in terms of look and feel for these ads, why did we think this was the right direction to go? You talked a little bit about already.
Yeah. So, I mean, LinkedIn ads are pretty kind of like standard businessy ads.
Mm-hmm.
And we wanted to go for something that would be like, it'd be really common to find on like Instagram or like Pinterest, but putting something like really bright and fun and like has a lot of movement on LinkedIn is something that would help them stand out a lot. And then we did do one that was more business aligned.
Mm-hmm.
So it was part of the reason that we did two so differently is so that we could test and see what kind of people are really like, what kind of audience.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little bit kind of like A/B testing, but with two completely different designs and messaging and purpose.
Yeah.
Since the business one pushed the business accounts more.
Yeah, and it looked a lot more like your standard kind of LinkedIn type of content that looks native to LinkedIn, native to the platform. Yeah. I think the other ones, what I think was really cool about them is they had so much color, and it was just so different that it really stood out. I think it'd be hard to ignore on LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. That's what I think probably you and I both loved so much about those. And it reminded me of like a few years ago when Apple came out with the like color iPods. Just a few years ago.
Yeah, a few
yeah, just a few. But it was kind of that ways too, where it's like the color scheme of those designs, which were customized too. You didn't talk about that because they make a big deal about you can upload your own designs,
Yeah.
And you really took that to heart with this. Like you didn't take any of their stuff from there. You designed all of those badges.
I wanted them to be really fun and exciting.
Yeah.
The ones that they have are very like standard business oriented, which is good. A lot of people like that, but we were already pushing something that was more unique, and I wanted to really like sell the uniqueness of it.
Mm-hmm. And it is a real offering they have. You can upload and make your own custom designs. So we wanted to emphasize that too by showing some truly custom designs just for this ad. Yeah.
So even with the unique approach, we were obviously way more excited about the hands one with the bright colors.
Yeah.
But then the data came back and it proved that, more people interacted with the more businessy one on LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. So even though we thought that the one that stood out would make more of an impact with people, and it's not like it didn't make an impact. It's just running those both simultaneously, like more people ended up going for the more businessy one, the more standard one that you would see on LinkedIn. So it was really interesting data.
Yeah.
A little disappointing data, but it's good to know because now we can use that for any kind of future campaigns too.
Yeah. What's interesting too, an insight that we didn't talk about yet also is that we also made a landing page for these ads, obviously, which you do all the time. But how do you take, depending on where they came from, whether they clicked on these really colorful, bright ads or whether they clicked on the more LinkedIn standard looking ads, as you said, the ones that kind of blend in more. They're two different styles visually. How did you marry those two styles so that you felt like you were in the right place when you landed on this landing page still too?
Yeah, I just recycled both of them and threw them on the page. The business accounts was really what they wanted to push the most. So like for the header, I wanted to show the businessy one first. But then right under that, we kind of do like a more like designy, like here's all of the like bright colors and here's all the other extra stuff that you can do. But on that first, then initial interaction for people, it is pushing the business accounts. Mm-hmm. It's really difficult to combine both the bright colors and a very standard blue business, very corporate. So you just kind of had to pick which one was a little bit more important. But keeping the other elements on that page, it still helps people feel like they didn't just click something and go somewhere else completely.
Right. And then despite not having like an established brand, we still did sort of keep some things consistent with like certain fonts and things like that, so that it still felt the two ads, even if we were to see both of them, it didn't feel like they were out of the blue, just completely different companies. Married those two together a little bit. I think, why does that matter in your mind? Like, say you land on the web on a landing page. Why is it important, would you say, to make sure that it looks like you're in the right place? I think that's pretty obvious with the question, but like, how do you make, you know what I mean? Like, explain why that's important to keep in mind too.
Yeah. I mean, even if it's like, if like, say like you have new ads that you're running with a little bit of a new twist of a design, but you're using an old landing page. Even if the content is the same, if it has a really like strikingly different look, people are going to think that either they're about to get hacked or that there was some kind of error, or that you're not real, like you're going to get scammed or something, or like they're going to get scammed. And that's that's like people's like gut reaction when they see that kind of stuff. So you only have like I can't remember what the number is, but there's like milliseconds for people to make a decision whether they're going to bounce or stay on the site. So you have that much time to make an impression on people, and you don't want that impression to be, this doesn't look anything like what I just clicked on. Right.
Yeah. I mean, if nothing else, I think you might just feel misled or let down to some degree. Like, there was a reason you clicked on that ad. You know what I mean? Like, in this case, if you really wanted something colorful and you showed up this site and it's not at all that, you're going to feel like to some degree you're not really going to get what you were advertised, and we don't want to do that either.
Yeah, you don't want to feel like you don't want people to think that you're a scam.
Yeah, exactly.
Or that you're not professional.
You know, what I think is really great is we ended up having just kind of perfect timing for this as we got this ready. You talked about at the beginning their needs, and something that was really interesting. They were a part of that larger site that you could order from. And before their partnership ended, right before that happened, we had started running these ads and started directing people to this landing page. That larger site they were a part of went down. Do you remember this?
I don't know if I knew.
You didn't hear this story?
No,
okay.
I don't think I knew.
Yeah, so that site went down for like a day or two or something. Something happened with it.
A day?
It was something crazy. It was something crazy. Anyway, the point is, or two.
I mean, that's crazy.
It is crazy. So that site went down, and because of that, though, it was actually sort of it was perfect that we had this ready to go for them, because they said they ended up getting a ton of sales because people had to go directly to them and not go through.
Wow, what perfect timing.
Yeah, so it was really good. So I mean, to some degree, we should take credit.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't do anything actually.
but so that kind of worked out really nicely. But it also, I think, is proof of why you can't just rely on these partnerships for businesses too. Like, it's good to still remember your own brand, or remember to push it for yourself and do these, because they may have had nowhere to send people. So we actually were able to direct a lot more sales to them, and sales went up a lot during that time.
Yeah, and they're still going pretty strong too.
Yeah, it's been a really effective campaign. I think, my favorite thing about it was just that full collaboration. I think we had so many discussions with our digital team, got so many just insights back and forth on where they were going to place them, how they were going to be placed, the audience, and understanding that audience. But then also, just again, we collaborated on everything from messaging to design, and then design back to motion. And then even how we created everything, it was sort of a all hands on deck, literally all hands. And yeah, it was just a lot of fun to work on. I think that's the kind of stuff that I enjoy most about what we get to do for a living, is that those days like that, it doesn't feel like you're working. It kind of just feels like you're playing, you know? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Cool. Cheers.
You didn't ask me about my bagel.
I know, but I haven't had anything to eat in like 40 hours. And I don't know if I can take hearing about your bagel, because I just know you're going to say it was good.
That's true. I would, because it was.
I thought for sure, I was like, you're going to start off and like, where's the bagel question?
I can tell that.
Don't you dare.
When did you write this? Because there's a lot of mentions of food.
Is there?
Yeah, because at the end, you're like, let's get some pizza.
Yeah, let's get some pizza when it snows Monday. How about that? Mm-hmm.
A lot could happen.
It's true. All right, I'm going to bring this back. Let's end this. Well, how do I end this? Yeah, well, thanks for listening, everybody. Jess, thanks for coming back on again. I'm sure we'll work on some other cool, fun project in the future, and we'll talk about that when that happens.
Can't wait.
Goodbye, world.